All right, well, here we go.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Divinely Uninspired Podcast, the podcast from Journey Church. And I'm here, as always, with Penny.
Hi, everyone.
And Jeremy.
Hello.
And due to popular demand, we've got Chad Carrollton back here talking on the mic. Chad, how's it going?
Very well, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you like that joke? If people are,
I love it.
Chad Carrollton?
I love it.
Okay. It's.
I still am laughing last week about Jeremy would say he spent the night at my brother's house and occasionally I would come by.
Yeah,
You weren't there very often.
To my own home.
Yeah.
well, that's the Jeremy we know and love, and we are all back for the first time in a while. We've had fall break last week. We got a Thursday night off of church, and we had lots of activities. I assume, Penny, did you all do anything fun, any big trips anywhere with your family?
Why do you assume that I traveled?
Well, I've done about 6 of these podcasts, and you've been on vacation after 3 of them. So.
No, we stayed in town. We went to Kentucky Down Under, and then we also did the mega zip lining. That was super fun. I was pretty proud of my kids.
The underground zip line?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like, you had to stand on a cliff. Like, you're obviously hooked in and everything, but look down and it's just caves. It was crazy.
Yeah. Did you go to the lizard show, like the guy that has the snakes and stuff at Kentucky Down Under?
No.
Oh, so we go there at least once a year. If I put up 1,000 people in front of you and said, pick out the guy that handles snakes for a living, you would immediately look at this guy. But he is awesome. Like, he is passionate about what he does, but he's amazing. So next time you go, you need to go to they do it like 3 times a day, where he brings out big turtles and snakes and all that stuff. And he's pretty amazing.
Paul hasn't been.
I've never been to Kentucky Down Under.
Yeah. Oh, you should go. It's awesome.
Down Under. No.
You can pet kangaroos.
Hey, well,
Yeah.
that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Apparently, you can eat kangaroos too in town. Have you ever been to Game?
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
Okay, there's a restaurant called Game where they serve just different kinds
They can
of
get
exotic meat.
pretty much any animal you would imagine they serve at Game.
Yeah, my cousin was
not
talking
good.
about it.
Grass fed?
Kangaroo is grass. I think it's free range.
Are they organic grass fed?
Yeah, I got the great.
It's lean.
My child is upset with me because I told them she couldn't eat kangaroo meat because it makes her jumpy, and then I have a 12-year-old, and I got the same reaction I'm getting from y'all because
No, it's a good joke.
Yeah, no, it's fine. All right. So, Jeremy, what'd you do? I'm not going to talk to Chad. He didn't have fall break. So.
I went to Florida for a few days, and then I capped it off with running the bourbon chase that I run every year.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah.
And what, for those who don't know, what's the bourbon chase?
So obviously we're in Kentucky, so the Bourbon Trail. So you start at Jim Beam, your van with 12 guys. Actually, Penny's husband was on my team, and he's really fast. Yeah. So. Yeah. I got in trouble because I don't know if I can say this or not, but we had nicknames on the team, and so I wanted to refer to him as the Crazy Fast Asian, but everybody thought it was too far.
Is
and
it
I was
Crazy
like,
Rich Agent?
Yeah, like it was a play on Crazy Rich Agent, but Crazy Fast because he was our fastest runner. But so yeah, you start at Jim Beam up here, and you run the Bourbon Trail. It's like 212 miles over a 24-hour period, and you get no sleep, and you stay in a van. And
now, what is the van part of it? Because I've heard this before.
So there's predetermined stops, and so like you start running here. When you're not running, you're in the van, and the van runs to the next spot, waits for you. That runner gets in the van, next person jumps out of the van, takes off running. So you basically live out of a van for 24 hours.
That sounds horrendous.
It's awesome.
So
It's a great experience.
We used to do something like that in soccer conditioning, and we can't say the name of that anymore either, but it was running and to stop. And
it's cool because like you go to parts of Kentucky you just normally wouldn't go to, and like the towns like go crazy because like I mean these are towns less than 1,000 people, and all of a sudden there's like 4,000 extra people in their town, so they get pretty excited about it.
They should have done it on Justified. That would have been a great.
So, but it's fun. It's a race I do every year, so that's how I capped off my my fall break.
Oh. And Chad, you do anything fun last week?
I did last week. I don't think so.
Sounds like no.
I can't remember.
He ate a salad. Yeah. That's going to be what Chad does.
I did. I probably ate a salad or two. I did a very, it's not to take us down, but I had to do a funeral for a really good friend, and that's what I did. So it was kind of crazy. No, but let's bring it back up.
I was going to say, bring it back up. You said not to bring us down. And then
know. I did bring us down. It was hard, but it was beautiful.
Yeah.
So, right. But it was... it was just a lot going on last week.
Did you get your wife that candle?
No, I did tell her about it.
Okay.
I said, because I ended up, she got to pick her favorite meal. And so I ended up doing some steaks in the oven, which is unique for me. So seared them, got them in the oven, overcooked them just a little too much. So it was a big bird error, all right, on that one. But yeah, I told her about the candle, which is always amazing when I'm mentioning a scented candle to my wife that, you know, and she's like, I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't do that. But she knew about the candles, and she knew about all the smells at Disney and, you know, and the intentionality behind it. And so, yeah, it was good. But she would rather Penny talk about the candles.
Well, I'm going to swing back over because Penny got a candle from me last week.
Know.
How was that?
So
Was it gross?
No, it wasn't. It smells better when you burn it. Mm-hmm. And also the candles like crackle, like they do like a little wood. It was so fun. I couldn't really smell it that much. It didn't smell like peanut butter. So just so everyone is in the same like conversation, Paul's like, hey, I have that ET candle. I'll bring it. It's already been like used, but I was like, I'll take it.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't go out and buy you a new one.
Well,
you gave her a used candle?
Yeah, well,
it was the ET candle.
It was a little intense in our house, that smell. So
Yeah, so it was cool.
Yeah.
I didn't smell as much as like the forest there, but it was cool. I like the little fire crackling. That was nice.
It's a nice.
Thank you, Paul.
Fancy wick candle. Well,
Let's go back to Chad cooking steaks in the oven. Never done that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she
baked
will
steak.
do, I agree.
Yeah.
Because I love to smoke.
Yeah.
I love to smoke things on the grill.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good change. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
good shift. Yeah, so I'm a grill guy.
Yeah.
But the fillets she does in the oven is amazing.
Okay.
So you sear on each side.
Yeah.
All right. On top of the oven, then you put it in. And I just let it stay in too long. My digital thermometer is really jacked.
So I've been doing the reverse sear. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So like on your grill, you do it real low, maybe like 200 degrees, and you cook the steak to the temp that you want. So like 130 is medium rare. This is a cooking show all of a sudden. And so I have a smoker I do it on, so it gets a little bit of smoke flavor too. While that's going on, I have my other grill and I crank it up as high as it'll go, which is about 800 degrees. And so once I get the steak to the temp I want, I throw it on the other grill and sear the outsides. And so it's crispy on the outsides, but a perfect temperature on the inside.
That's what I screwed up.
Yeah, reverse sear.
It wasn't.
I'm asleep down here.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
we got 2 grills. This guy.
This is such a dude conversation.
Man,
Also,
I
Jeremy
wanna-
really likes meat. That's
Yeah.
like his thing.
yeah.
Me and Penny are going to go have some chocolate martinis, and you tell me about your steaks.
Anyway, so I just never heard the oven thing, so I didn't know if you had like a
Very
trick
good.
that I've never
It
heard
is
of.
very
Okay.
good. It's
Yeah.
very good. And then you do some Brussels sprouts afterwards.
Yeah.
After you've made the steaks.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That does sound pretty good.
So,
Well,
As long as I'm not cooking.
but again, I screwed up. They were medium. They needed to be medium rare.
Yeah.
it's hard
And,
to if it's in the oven. It's hard to get that meat thermometer in there. You got to keep whipping that door open and checking it. It's
But she was still celebrated.
Yeah.
that's right.
Still very much celebrated.
Listen, do you feel loved? Then shut up. That's what I say at home. Yeah.
That's it. And so
Do you feel loved?
Do you feel loved? Yes. Then shut up.
What
That's
if she
right.
says no?
Well, then she needs to figure it out because I told her yesterday I love her.
Are you one of those guys?
No.
I had a guy, this is a small group leader at Oklahoma where we grew up, and he told us one time, this is the worst advice ever, but he said one time, he said, I told my wife on the day that I married her that I loved her, and I told her if it ever changed, I'd let her know.
That's good.
And I was
Saves
like,
you a lot of time.
well, you probably have a healthy marriage, because
Well.
that sounds terrible. Even as a 60-year-old, I was like, I think that's bad advice that you're giving us.
I don't know. I think my wife might be like, "Oh, thank goodness. Just
Yeah.
give me a break." So,
it's just playing not to lose there. Not really playing to win.
that's right. Well, I mean, look, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So, marriage. You're 15 years next month. So,
You hear the Nate Bargatze joke about marriage? He's like, marriage is a lot like prison. You don't know how you got there, and you just can't wait to get out. Anyway, but Nate Bargatze's taking over the world. We'll talk about Nate Bargatze another time.
well, speaking of The Office,
Fits his little family channel he's coming out with.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, I think he's cleaned it up a lot. I feel like I've heard
Yeah.
a lot of podcasts where people are like, Nate doesn't want us to tell this story, but this is how he used to be. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, guys, cut it out.
Yeah.
Cut it out. So, all right. So we have been sitting on this big story for a while until we had some time. But apparently they are, now that this big strike, or at least part of it's over, they are going to try to reboot the TV show The Office, and I know there's going to be some passionate takes at this table, I feel like, with that. So who wants to start with? I'm going to go with Penny.
What? Oh, I didn't read the article. Okay, so is Michael returning?
No.
Oh, never mind.
He wasn't on it at the end.
Hard
It
pass.
wasn't at the end. Well, they didn't. Actually, it doesn't say that he's not returning, but he was not mentioned in the people.
Same cast?
Yeah. Mostly the same cast.
Well, I mean, all they're doing is Cheerio commercials now, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Can we
Krasinski's
really
doing
bring
all right.
this back? Like,
Yeah,
can we do
Krasinski's
this?
doing pretty good. He's got some movies. Yeah.
Because, yeah, he's on.
He's going to be in Fantastic Four coming out. He's going to be
Is he
Mr.
really?
Fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, he was in the last one.
Yeah, I think they said he's going to keep that role. Anyway, I would love to see it. The Office is still my favorite show of all times. I mean, so for example, this week in the Bourbon Chase, I had a really bad blister that got infected on my toe. And so I know everybody's tired of hearing about it. But no, here's why I say that. This is why I say it, is because it was really painful to run. And there was a team at one of the stops that was an amputee team. They were all double amputees on their legs. And so I made the reference that I should join their team because now I know what it's like to run without a good leg. And I was referencing The Office from when Michael burns his foot on the George Foreman grill. And then, no, it's one of my favorite episodes. He burns his foot and then he brings in the office manager, who's the guy in the wheelchair, and he's trying to say how they relate. So I was obviously being not real about it, but that was my reference point.
Did they get the joke? That's
A
the
couple of
question.
them that watched it got it. The other ones were like,
Okay.
"You're very insensitive." And I
Did
was
you
like,
have a Journey shirt on when you were?
No.
Okay,
No.
good. This
This was just to my team. It wasn't like I was
Oh.
openly saying.
okay.
I didn't say it to the amputee
good thing.
people. No.
Good thing is it was just to your team as we're discussing that on the podcast. So I think that's.
But it fits into the Office conversation.
So
No.
the question was, if you would have said it to them, would like it be inappropriate now? Because that's like The Office. Like, is it?
What was inappropriate when Michael did it?
I
mean,
know,
that
but
was
could we do that today?
Go to
Like,
an
no, do The Office again. In general, like, I mean, you can't.
That's the big question
Yeah.
in light of language today being seen as violence.
Yeah.
That can you watch The Office and be offended and not seek to cancel?
I'm always offended when I watch it,
Oh.
but it's good.
I mean, that's the reason I watch it is because Michael's actually not my favorite character. My favorite character is Creed. But like Michael does so many cringeworthy
Whose OG
things.
name is Creed.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
like.
So he does so many cringeworthy things. That's part of what kept me coming back to it. It's just like I still watch Scott's Tots and just I know it's
can't
coming
watch it.
and I get
can't.
so uncomfortable. But I think that's what's so brilliant about the show is it was, I mean, there was even episodes. I don't know if you know, the second episode was the sexual training that you do in offices. What's it called?
Sexual harassment.
Sexual harassment training. Yeah, that thing. And
Thank-
so we probably didn't
thank
do
you,
that here.
Penny.
And so
Thanks, Hot Stuff. We
so
appreciate your
yeah, that one wasn't even aired. You could only watch it now in
Peacock?
Yeah, on
Oh.
Peacock and stuff. So that's actually an episode nobody really saw until they started re-releasing it because even then it was too offensive.
I had it on DVD.
Yeah.
Is it? I mean, this is a question. Neither conservative nor liberal. Okay. The very ones that are seeking to cancel majority of the things that are out there, are they also the ones that are binge watching The Office through and through?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good. Yeah.
What a conundrum.
Yeah, that really is. Yeah, I think if you talk to the people that are in cancel culture, which we talked about, 4 episodes ago, yeah, I would say that's a lot of the same people. Yeah, so it's
Nice.
actually interesting.
Yeah, I don't.
As my daughter would say, that's being a hypocrite.
Yeah, it
Your
is.
daughter's sharper than most adults.
She
Man,
is.
that's really good because I wonder what. I mean, Twitter is not. It was not the thing back when The Office was on. It really starts showing your age when they show when the show started and how long it's been off the air, and you go, "Oh no."
Well, I think that there's so many. I think
the world's changed.
Here's what I appreciate about The Office: it was an equal opportunity offender. Like, I mean, it wasn't like they focused on one particular crowd. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that's what, like, if you weren't offended by, or if you were a group of people that weren't offended by this episode, just wait 3 episodes because they're going to do one that's going to. And I think that's the thing about like even like stand up comedy, like we talked about before, is like it's not real. Like I don't know. So I would love to see it come back. I don't know if you could do it, but I think that they offended everybody at some point and pretty much covered, I feel like, every kind of stereotypical way we view people that like it was equal opportunity offender.
Well, we've talked about it before, and
So it's not like one group would just get all up in arms.
Well, we're going to talk about it later, but it's the lack of people being able to think critically about what they're watching and what they're doing and what they're seeing, because this is the argument that the writers of The Simpsons had when people got mad, and they said the point of the show is Homer's wrong, and he's dumb, and you shouldn't celebrate him. You should go, oh, I don't want to be like this person. He's saying something that you might find funny. But we're not making fun of them. We're saying this person is a dumb person. And that's what Michael Scott, a lot of it was, this is not a smart person.
Yeah, he was wrong. They were painting him as he's wrong. Like the views that he has are wrong. Like they were funny, but like it was very much portrayed. It's not like anybody has like took him like his philosophy and the way he viewed the world was like, I'm going to run with that. That seems like a good idea.
That's
some people have.
Right.
Some people have.
When you hear something is offensive and you're like, I heard something offensive, but you don't take the context of, oh, that's a dumb person saying that. Yeah. I shouldn't really be offended. I'm sorry, Penny.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, isn't that like a really good actor, though? Someone who has all of these lines that is supposed to be offensive, but you still fall in love with the character because of who he is. Like, that's really good acting.
Yeah.
He was a lovable doofus.
Yeah.
So.
Well, he got redemption moments. I mean, I think that was the point.
Maybe,
was there was a lot of built-in redemption moments for him. I mean, especially towards the end.
And good writing.
That's why they didn't go that far with the English one, because Gervais doesn't have that in him, because you really never feel bad for anything when something happens to him.
Have you watched
He's
that?
kind of a jerk. Oh, yeah. It's so good.
Really?
There's only like 8 episodes for 2 seasons of it. But it's funny.
I think I would love to see a backstory, like if they did a reboot, like maybe episodes where they do the backstory. I would love to see how Creed became Creed. Like, you know how there's so many references to, like, you know, I mean, obviously there's the big thing. Was he the
we've talked about it.
Was he the Scranton Strangler? But but anyway, so
I wonder what they're gonna do. We brought this up last time in a different context, but like post-COVID, working remote, like will they do something fun with that piece of it? You know,
they might, yeah.
Of just, and will that take away because there's just something about being in the office together?
Yeah.
Well, write it down today. October 10th, 2023, this show will never come on the air. That's my hot take. It won't make it. Something will happen, or they'll just say, we can't do it.
I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
It sounds, people want the ratings, but it's not going to happen.
I don't know if you should do a whole reboot. I would like to maybe see a reunion show, maybe where it's like a Where Are They Now might be something feasible, but a whole reboot would, I don't know what you'd do. I don't know if you could recreate, not only because of what we've talked about, the context of the offensive. I don't know how, like you're saying, you could recreate that and it'd be, I think that was what was so good about The Office is it first, I mean, it was just like unlike any, it was so authentic almost feeling. It really was. And I don't know how
There's a reason people are binge watching it now, which does not mean that it should come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, as much as I like the thought, as much as my wife loves, I mean, she listens to the podcast of, you know, the
ladies, yeah.
Angela and
Office
Pam.
Ladies.
Office Ladies, yeah.
Which is fantastic, given the context. But it's almost like, I don't know if today is just, it's like the guy coming out of retirement 2 years later. Like, it's like, it was just good.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. The Office was one of my favorite shows until Michael left. One favorite show of all time. It's hard. Like, you have to qualify like 6 seasons or 7 seasons of it, and then 2 that I could do without. But a lot of shows are like that, where you get that magic for a few years. I love the show Community, and it was great for 3 years. And then they fired the guy that started it, and they had a terrible year, and they brought him back, and then the show wasn't the same because it really had that magic at first, and then it kind of settled, and then there was no...
Seinfeld. Seinfeld never tried to do a comeback. Well, and I appreciate that.
I do. Well, and in that show, for the record, as I said about The Office, that show's been off the air for 25 years, if that makes you feel good about...
The Office has been?
No, Seinfeld.
Oh, I thought you said The Office. I came with that, but Seinfeld,
It's 25 years.
I say The Office, I will say the last couple seasons, there were 2 characters I really enjoyed. Robert California.
Oh, no.
I just thought he was so weird that I loved him. And then Will Ferrell was the manager for a brief period of time. But like when they did Andy as the manager, and then when they brought in Alders, I was like, I could do with all that. But
I like him.
Robert California was so creepy.
So does my wife.
Yeah.
He knows the effect that he has on women. So
Robert California was so creepy that I just kind of enjoyed it. But
he was.
I will say a show that I felt like ended in their peak was Parks and Rec. I felt like Parks and Rec could have had a couple more seasons, but I agree with you on The Office and on Community. It needed to end. But Parks and Rec, I felt like ended, and they were hitting a pretty good stride, and then it was just over.
We've discussed watching it a second time through.
Parks and Rec, yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we got one more take if we want to talk about things that should be rebooted, and we'll ask Jeremy because he is the leader of the fan club. What do you think about bringing back the Cosby Show?
I don't think you could do it.
All right, that's fair. That's all we needed.
Yeah.
All right, that's what Jeremy thought. So,
I
moving on.
literally had that joke in my mind 2 minutes ago and said, nope, I'm not doing it.
So now, for all of you who've waded through the frivolity, we're going to get into the Christianity.
So did we decide, do we want an Office reboot or no?
No.
No. Okay.
That seems like, what do you got, Chad? Yes or no?
No.
Yeah. All right.
4 no's?
4 no's.
Oh, man. So, sorry, Greg Daniels, if you hear it, I apologize. Also, don't try to bring back King of the Hill. I hear you're doing that as well. I don't think it's going to work. But we're going to get into the hardcore Bible part of our podcast today. Chick-fil-A is building a 4-lane drive-thru that will handle 75 cars. And I don't know if you've been through a Chick-fil-A lately, but they all tend to have 75 cars as it is with only 2. So how do you think this is going to work? Jeremy, you sent me this article. What...
Yeah, I sent this because actually so the reason I sent this was obviously I love Chick-fil-A, but when we were on vacation last week, we were going through a Chick-fil-A that wasn't like this. It didn't have the upstairs, but it was only basically a drive-thru. Like they almost built like what looked like a Rally's, remember how like Rally's?
Yeah.
And then there were 2 lanes on each side. It wasn't as like from the future looking as this thing is. But that's how nobody was going in. Like
where were you for this?
Oh, somewhere in Alabama. It all runs together in Alabama.
Hot take.
Yeah, hot take. Alabama's pretty awful, but driving through. I mean, the state's probably great. Their football program is whatever.
Indiana is worse.
Yeah. Well, Kansas. You do Kansas? Kansas is just
All right, worst state.
Anyway,
Penny, what's your worst state?
I don't even know.
Okay.
I'm not even part of this. I'm just looking at the Chick-fil-A.
but anyway, it was basically a Rally's, and they had like drive-through lanes, and we pulled in because my daughter really wanted Chick-fil-A, and we've been holding off all week. And there was about probably 50 or 60 cars in front of us, and we were still through the line in 5 minutes.
Now, so I like to say a lot of things, and I've been known to be wrong occasionally, and I will apologize to Chick-fil-A because when they started this wild scheme of the double lane, have the poor children out with their clipboards and their swipers, I was very much against that because in my mind, it doesn't make sense that would make it faster. And I'm not convinced that is why they are so efficient as much as it's just the culture of a Chick-fil-A. But they do a good job with their drive-thru. And, I mean, if you've been in a McDonald's line or a Wendy's line and you just know it's not going to end anytime soon, but somehow Chick-fil-A keeps zipping through. So I'm willing to give this a shot. And if you want to look this up, it is QSRmagazine.com, the foremost magazine of America. I've never really heard of it. I don't know what QSR stands for, so apologies if it's something.
I was trying to guess in my head.
Yeah, if it's no good. But this picture of this Chick-fil-A that is the concept art is actually really kind of amazing. It's almost like a double bank underneath, like you're driving through with people working on both sides, and then there's an upstairs for people to go in and eat. It's really...
Yeah, it says you can reserve your spot to sit down, too.
Oh,
I think
system.
Where is this supposed to be?
Well, I think this is just what they're saying, is the new ones are going to be perhaps. This is their concept for...
Is Chick-fil-A like all that?
I mean...
It's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's all that, but it's the only fast food that every once in a while I kind of crave.
Or is it like because your kids are going to eat good there too? Like me, it's like I know my whole family will eat there. And it's like, oh, Chick-fil-A and their customer service. But going back to the fact that the drive-thru, when you go through McDonald's, it's one person at the window. You know what I'm saying?
And like
there,
it's like
like
money
10.
and the food.
I think the Chick-fil-A thing more than the food is I know that my order is going to be right. And if it's not right, they're going to fix it. And I mean, this is to be honest, I'm not worried about anything being done to my food or like that hamburger. I mean, I've seen some pretty interesting things. I used to work fast food, so I can tell you some horror stories about KFC, but probably should never eat there ever. But yeah,
Views and opinions of Jeremy do not reflect the views of Journey.
I mean, we would drop chicken on the ground before we breaded it and be like, oh, it's going to go through the fryer. It's fine. I
mean, technically though, like, right?
Yeah, I mean, but still.
I mean, you could deep fry.
But I think that the Chick-fil-A is more than the food. It's that you feel assured that this is going to be right, and it's not going to. It's going to taste good. I think that's why people crave it so
So
much.
you're buying chicken, but they're selling you confidence in their
the
product.
Product that
Yeah.
it's gonna, and if it's not right, they're gonna fix it.
And it would be their pleasure. They'll
It'd
tell
be their
you.
pleasure to fix it.
Yeah. And you say, that's right, it is.
Oh,
You're
fancy.
welcome. Oh,
Yeah,
and
that is
they're-
pretty cool.
They're expecting some high-end cars to be rocking through this. They still have the walkway, though. Man, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this, actually, because are they tearing down the old Chick-fil-A's? I don't know. This seems to be...
Well, I think it's just the concept they're trying.
It's a good thought. I like the idea, but we'll see how it works. I don't know how you get off the street. I think that's the problem that we have at a lot of the Chick-fil-A's, and especially the one that just opened up on Preston down the road. When that thing opened, the line through the 2 lanes was out onto Preston Highway the day it opened. And
Yeah.
Can I ask a
the same
question?
chicken.
That's what I don't understand is when, like, here in Shepherdsville. So, for example, like when a new restaurant opens, you can't get in there for like 3 days. Like when Rally's opened, that line was packed. I mean, it was an hour wait to get through Rally's, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, "You guys know there's a Rally's
a
like 5
Rally's.
miles away, and like
And
nobody."
also, this is a Rally's. I don't know what.
But it's the same thing with Chick-fil-A. Like when they opened the new one, I heard the same thing that like the lines were ridiculous, and I'm like, everybody knows there's like 2 or 3 more within
Yeah.
like a 4-mile radius of here. Like
They love new.
I don't understand.
They
You know what I'm
love new.
saying? I don't.
Do you eat Chick-fil-A, Chad?
they have a nice salad, don't they?
They do have
Yeah.
a good salad. So
And they have grilled
I'm
nuggets.
not their grilled.
You don't like the grilled?
I'm not the grilled chicken
No.
fan at all. But their little Cobb salad is.
Yeah.
They had a
Money.
kale salad that was pretty good for a little while.
Their
I like-
wrap is
Yeah.
very good.
The cool wrap?
Grilled chicken wrap. Yeah, that's really good.
I like the
So,
spicy Southwest salad. It's really good. It's my favorite.
here's
I
the
like
thing,
the number
though.
one with a large diet lemonade. No salad for me there. Sorry.
Diet lemonade, huh?
Well, I mean, that's what they call it. I think it's got Splenda in it, but it's pretty good.
I will say people go crazy over them. The waffle fries aren't my favorite.
No, I same.
They have to be crunchy.
They're
for
not.
me.
Cr-
Yeah,
they're
they
soft.
need to be
They're
crunchy.
they're a little sloppy sometimes.
I like
Yeah.
them warm and soggy.
What?
That's how like my fries. Put some salt on them; they stick better.
Warm and soggy.
Again,
If you just
keep
joined us, I
talking your
apologize.
high school nicknames in here, warm and soggy.
That's right. Well, it was good having you, Chad. And I know you got to get out of here.
We've had nothing positive from the 2 articles. Like, both of them have ended. Very sad.
No, I
Well-
would still go to this, but I don't get it.
Well,
What is that? Oh, sorry. It says something about Starbucks, and I was like, are they going to put a Starbucks with it? Because that would be money.
it would be money for Starbucks because they're already charging $9 for a coffee. So,
Yeah. Well, I pay it.
well, listen to you. I know. And then you wonder why you get hassle over.
But that's what I think about Starbucks. Like, at what point are they just going to lower the price? Like,
Never.
they need to. Like, they're
Well, a lot of
making so
places
much
need
money.
to lower the price.
I mean, they're
That's
making so much money.
They don't need to lower it because people are still paying it. Why would they lower it?
Are
Okay.
you all Starbucks over though, like local?
The local ones here are not great. But so we kind of. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Yeah.
whispered into the
Well, so here's what I say.
Oh, because we know
in case
those people?
I know Danny real well.
All right,
so
well-
he'll get over it. But it's not Danny's fault. Here's what I would say about local sometimes. Here's what I'll say about Starbucks, and I think it's the same thing about Chick-fil-A. Is are you taking a stop?
Yep, timestamp.
You don't need to edit it out.
But we'll just see.
Yeah. Anyway, he'll text me and be like, "Ah, I liked your joke about my coffee sucks." But
Cut all this out. Whatever you want.
here's the thing. Don't cut this out. Here's the thing. It's Starbucks is like Chick-fil-A to me, and then I know every time I go in and order the cold brew, it's going to taste the same. When I go to local places, sometimes it's not the same depending on who the barista was that day. Does that like? There's one drink I used to get where it's like, all right, this is way too many pumps of sugar. Why don't we cut that by like an eighth? You know. And then there's other times where it's like so.
I was offended when my wife went with me to one of my favorite local coffee shops to Louisville. And she went up to the barista and she said, "Now this is what I order at Starbucks. What would that be here?"
Oh, no.
And it was, it was deeply offensive,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. I felt, I just immediately.
Did they
just-
play along for her at least?
Yeah, he was very kind. There was there was a grin, but it was like I did watch every move the barista made from that point forward.
I would never do that because that's deeply offensive.
Yeah.
But I do because I do get anxiety going to new coffee shops because I don't know
Yeah.
what they're good at or like what their thing is. So I did it with you that one day. I just asked the barista, "What do you recommend?" and then I'll just get whatever they recommend because it's like at least this way it's
Yeah.
probably something they make well. And
If it's single origin, and this is the thing about Starbucks, if Starbucks would have kept, some of their places had the single origin coffee. If they do that, they're golden.
yeah,
The rest of it tastes like ash.
yeah. You had to emphasize that. You had to emphasize that H
I
there.
did. I wanted to emphasize, but it's
Paul, you
it's-
better
Paul
not
was ready
take this
for it.
out. Paul,
It's
do not
ash.
take any of this conversation out.
Paul
I had
hates
a
coffee.
lady. I had a lady.
coffee.
I had a lady, Edna, who lived down the street from me when I was a kid, and she inevitably burned me on my arm with her cigarettes every time because she would lose focus and it would burn my arm. That's a little bit of the feeling I have when I get Starbucks coffee. Cold brew is really
The
good,
cold brew is good.
but it tastes like Edna Ash. It tastes like Edna Ash.
This is so great.
We're gonna get a mature rating
Penny-
on this because
Penny, what does cold brew do for you?
No, we're not having this conversation on the air.
cold brew. What
No.
about it?
Oh, well, it's
Nothing.
off the air. All right.
It is off the air conversation. I told him my husband bought me a cold brew.
Well, go ahead
Like-
and just tell us. You already started the conversation.
No, it was off the air. It's
You know what? I'm just gonna say it.
Penny already forgot what we were talking about. It's fine.
Listen,
So your husband brought you a cold brew.
He bought me where I can make it at home because
Yeah.
I spend way too much money on cold brew. He's
Yeah.
like, I will buy you a machine, you can make it. And like I can't figure it out yet because the concentrate is really heavy.
You're
Like
supposed to thin it out.
I know, but it's kind of making my stomach a little weird. So I got to figure that out.
Yeah, when you do cold brew, it's so concentrated.
say
You're supposed
that.
to like add like I read one time like whatever, like if you put 8 ounces in, you're supposed to add 4 ounces of water to it because it is so concentrated.
Yeah, but if I keep it at that concentrate, does it give me more of a caffeine?
No, it's still gonna be the same amount of caffeine. 'cause
Oh,
you're just gonna be
okay.
watered
Well,
down.
I guess I should just put some water in it. That's disappointing. I really was doing that because I thought it gave me more like of a caffeine buzz.
No, because 8 ounces is still 8 ounces. So if you had 8 ounces and then add 4 ounces of water, you're still getting the same amount of caffeine.
You're right.
Yep.
And I'm a teacher too. So just putting that out there. It's been a while, y'all.
She's not a math teacher.
By the way, me and my wife watched a documentary last night about a telescope, and I was fully enthralled. And she was like, "You are the dumbest, most boring person I've ever met in my life."
What can I tell us? Now I'm interested.
It's on Netflix. It's called Unknown. It's about the James Webb Telescope,
I think
the
I
one they sent out in
started that.
space. It's fascinating to me, but it was about how they built it and stuff. And my
Yeah.
wife was like, "Why are we watching this?" And I was just like, "Because I really want to know about this."
All right.
Paul's
Well,
got nothing.
this is where we would normally drop in our ad for Starbucks, but I guess
Yeah.
we're losing that this week with all the bad talk. So
I liked Starbucks.
Yeah,
Chad was the
same.
one that tastes like ash.
listen, I'm not a Starbucks
Star
person.
sucks.
Yeah.
I used to get the Frappuccino, and then I was like, well, I really need 1,200 calories just to hang out and have this lightly coffee thing. So I just don't go to Starbucks anymore. I'm not a big coffee person, so
Their workers are always kind, though.
Yeah, well,
I will say
yeah.
that.
Starbucks.
They're always kind. I've ran into some that are not, but the majority have been really kind through the drive-thru
right underneath
when I'm
Chick-fil-A.
ordering my wife's drink.
Well, and that's where I
want
feel
that
like when I
24.
go to Starbucks versus another coffee shop, like I don't feel like. I mean, I go into some coffee shops and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm cool enough to be here. Like and the barista looks at you and you're just like, just tell me what you would order. And I'll just have one of those. Yeah, but I do like local coffee better than the chain stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you. That could be a podcast in and
What do you
of
think,
itself.
Paul?
I just I have no opinions that matter for any of this stuff. So I
You're
like
just-
Chick-fil-A.
You're
I don't
just
like
sitting
coffee.
over there warm and soggy, aren't you?
I'm just
Speaking of which, you ever put coffee grounds on a steak? We talked about steaks earlier.
No,
Yes.
Yeah, pretty
stop.
good.
Stop with the cooking.
Sometimes I get my number one at the Chick-fil-A and I dip it into my cold brew, and then I get the best of both worlds like that.
That
So it
sounds
seasons
awful.
it properly.
That sounds
awful.
really bad.
That doesn't happen. So who's got the money to go to both of those places? We're like, we got one stop this week. We can go to Chick-fil-A or Starbucks because things is tight.
Although I would say if they to Penny's point, if they partnered up and put a Starbucks Chick-fil-A combo, every white woman under the
right.
age of 50 would be there at least 3 times a week. I think it would be quite the moneymaker.
The question is, how much do you spend when you
There's been a
go?
lot of things that have come out of your mouth today.
When's the last time you've been to Chick-fil-A
I'm just
as a
going.
family?
I'm just going full on
Chick-fil-A as a
office.
family. Well, we got that second mortgage on our house, and then we went to the one at the mall.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it costs like $45 to eat there as a family of 4.
It was 30 something the last time we went for
Kids'
us.
meals?
You know what I did? I did not get. We didn't get the kids something. We skipped something. And
That's what happened.
Yeah, and my wife got something weird, so she didn't get a side. I don't know, but it's staggering. Well, I mean, if you took your 2 kids to Starbucks, it's going to be just as much. So They return that tip.
They don't
thing
get to
around
go to
look at you
Starbucks.
like, I like a little bit
That's
something
just
for
me.
the effort. Chick-fil-A is not asking for tips yet, so you got that going for you.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Oh,
amidst all that,
that's actually a really good point. Can we talk about that? Because the
Tips?
tipping,
Yeah, tipping's got out of control.
I didn't even realize that Chick-fil-A does not ask for a tip. Oh, good for them.
Oh, can I tell you about my story from vacation about tipping? Because I think we used to have an episode about this, but this one really made me mad. So a lot of places in Florida, they include the tipping in it. Like in places you wouldn't normally. Now you can opt out of giving that tip, but you have to check a box says that you don't want to do it. But like an ice cream place, like they included an 18% tip in it, and I was like, you scooped out 2 scoops of ice cream. I don't know if this is worth $9, but I mean, if restaurants and stuff I get. But anyway, but we should talk about that sometime because that was pretty. And then one place I didn't know the tip was included at first, so I gave them another 20% tip. So I tipped 40% on a not good quality of service. So that person probably thought they were killing it that night. And anyway.
well, I didn't hear any of that because I was trying to work a cow tipping joke into Chick-fil-A, and I got nothing. So you're welcome. All right. Well, we're going to move on. So if
Have you ever been cow tipping? I can take you. I used to go when I was in high school.
You would.
I was from Bullitt County.
just pick out a lady and you get underneath it and you put your shoulder into it.
What?
It's from
Stop.
Tommy Boy. All right.
Oh, yeah, that is for Tommy Boy.
Okay.
We're doing our best Michael Scott's here today.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just in the vein of the vibe. And, yeah.
All right. So if you're listening, this is the part you can turn on the show. The fun part's over and we're going to get to the ugliness.
What?
Kyle told me that he doesn't listen to the front part.
The fun part.
He likes the good discussion. And the good discussions are good.
Yeah, they were good.
That
Last week,
doesn't
it's-
surprise me.
It's why he brought Chad back. Me and Penny
Yeah.
weren't adding much, so we got
true.
Chad. So
Not true.
if you are online this week, and you know what, I don't even know how you would find this. I found it by accident, but apparently Andy Stanley is under fire, and we're not going to get into the details of what's going on, but his church had an event, and he had a response to it, and it is blowing up the Christian internet sphere anyway with what's going on. And I thought it would be good to not walk on eggshells with the rest of it, but to get into what I like how Penny said it about Christians reacting versus responding to news. And much like we read the Office article headline and then started getting opinions about what the Office article was about and what it should be and what our thoughts and views on it, it seems like a lot of people who don't know any of the details other than various clickbaity headlines have huge opinions about people and their eternities and their the things that they've got going on in their life just based on 5 or 6 words that someone wrote. So who wants to start talking about how Christians can respond or react or somewhere in the middle?
I don't know. I won't respond yet. We'll get into the conversation about it. But I do think that and I think this goes back to what we talked about. I think the biggest issue that Christians face from a public perception is that everybody knows what we're against. They very rarely know what we're for. And so we're very quick to talk about what we're against, regardless of what the topic is. And we boycott, we do all of that. And so I think that is the part where it gets confusing to people outside the church, but also inside the church is we just seem angry and upset with each other all the time. And I get part of that because I think that, we hold these truths to be very, not self-evident, but very important to us. And, we do believe when it comes to the Bible that we are taking these scriptures that have been given to us and gifted us. And so, there's going to be varying opinions on them. And so I think it's okay that people have conviction behind it. It's just that the way in which we go about responding, especially from a public platform, I think can be very harmful to Christianity as a whole sometimes. Because I think a lot of people get confused by it, would be my first thought. So I don't disagree that people get upset about these things. I think it's the way in which they go about it sometimes is the problem.
Yeah. My first question usually is if someone's out there on social or in general is, man, have they called him or have they called her yet? Like, meaning did somebody pick up the phone and just, hey, I'm trying to understand like what this, what's the intent, behind this. And sadly, I don't know that we have I think everything's become so polarizing, that we don't necessarily have a culture of disagreement, if you will. Like, I don't know many friendships that I have that we agree on everything. And so how do we disagree? So it tends to be the conversation either is in church world, it's either from the pulpit or it's in social media. And it's like we need that in-between space to have what I would call long-form discussion. And, in that, even though I may disagree, I may not hold to, certainly hold to these views or whatever it may be, but how do we disagree in a really, healthy way? And I think that's throughout the scriptures. And, I just don't like that's my first question.
And I think piggybacking on what you said, not only did they reach out to that person, I think that a lot of times, for example, the big one that comes to me from our kind of last couple of decades of ministry is Rob Bell when he wrote the Love Wins book. People were going crazy about it, and maybe they had the right to, I don't know, but they hadn't even read it yet. It was just, hey, John Piper was, or I shouldn't say names, but this guy was against it, so now I'm against it. And then I had people, when I read the book, I actually didn't have that much of an issue with a lot of what he was, because a lot of what he was questioning, I think this is the bigger part of some of the stuff, is the theological side of it is almost everything that we believe, not all of it, but a lot of it in modern Christianity was once considered heresy. Because it was somebody said something and it was new, it wasn't orthodox or whatever. So that's a whole different conversation. But I think that what happens a lot of times is people start these new thoughts or have these new questions that sometimes aren't even new questions, and people get all upset. But all that to say, like, a lot of times people are upset and either they didn't talk to the person or they don't even actually know what the person wrote or attended the conference or heard the sermon. They saw a snapshot or they saw a title or they saw this person's against it. And so they jump to, I'm against that too, without actually knowing what was actually said or what was actually going on. And I think that's a big problem too.
Yeah, I remember the Rob Bell one, and I loved the guy from, I think he was from England, because it was going crazy on Twitter. And he wrote in and said, my name is Rob Bell, what have I done wrong? And so, but I think there's a lot to be said there. Like, it's just, man, if you're outside looking in at some of these conversations that you have so-called Christians on both sides, followers of Jesus, and the way they go about it is just, it's awful. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Like, I hold orthodox views certainly on a lot of things that I would be in disagreement. I don't know, I'm not getting into the content of Stanley here, but it's like, even that, I'd just love to sit down with him and just, hey, like, can you just explain, like, what's going on here? But, rather than write an article per se and just say, oh, he's doing this, and just making a lot of assumptions that I simply don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think, that particular, we won't get into the details of but he did respond to it in a sermon to his church. And, and he even said that I normally wouldn't do this, but I felt like I had to because of all these articles being written and knowing people are going to see them and read them. And I think that goes back to your point of in this particular person, the person that wrote the article that kind of started all this, they're a big prominent name. And they know they got a lot of followers, and they go to and I think that was also to that, I don't want to say misuse because I don't know this person. So, but it felt like a little bit of a misuse of like, I'm just going to jump to this. Whether you agree with what happened or not, you immediately started slandering the guy without having a conversation, knowing what maybe fully was going on, giving this person a chance to actually speak why they did what they did, and I think that's the bigger problem in the social media age, but also this age of influence is you got all these people that are influencing so many people. And here's the other side of it. If they do that, then it must be okay to act like that. And then all of a sudden you get on Twitter and people are just, not just this issue, any issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I really respect this person. They're a Christian. And so if they responded this way to this, whether it's right or wrong in the theology of it, the way they responded, then that must be open ground that we can do it too. And I think that becomes a bigger issue too.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of so I didn't see an article about it per se. Like I said, I stumbled upon the controversy by accident, and then I thought, well, let me look this up. And then I saw Andy Stanley's sermon on YouTube.
And it was good.
And I don't usually, that's not what I usually do on YouTube. And Jeremy, you're number one. Is that your thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I can usually barely get through the Sunday's sermon at church. But then I saw this extra sermon on YouTube, and
I could hear you. You're literally 2 feet away from me.
I was doing a bit. All right. So it was very good. Like he took a very measured take and very easy, like, hey, this is what people are saying, and here's my response to it. But because I watched that, YouTube said, this guy, he must be the foremost excited person about what's going on with Andy Stanley. And they are saying, how about this video? Well, what about this video? And I watched a couple of these people who, for better or worse, I've never heard of. And I know that, I'm not huge into that sphere of celebrity Christians and such, but people that were taking a well-known name and then they're making content to get views based on their reaction to what they heard was said. Like maybe not even said it, and then a lot of them taking the stance of, I knew it all along, and this is how I feel about this. And then people with, like 5,000 subscribers versus 500,000, something like that, are getting, 100,000 views for this, and they have the live chat going, and people are just some of the most hateful things I've ever read about somebody who, who they've never met, who they, like you said, they've never sat down and talked with. They're just like, that's right, this guy, he's a heretic.
Well, and I think,
go ahead. It's out of control.
I was just going to say, I remember years ago, I was studying for a sermon, and I had a couple of books out on the table, and I was in this restaurant studying, and I could hear the table behind me, and they were debating about the church that I worked for. And it wasn't very kind things being said. And so I'm listening to all this, and I could tell one was kind of discipling the other. And so the guy gets up and he comes over to my table. Well, an N.T. Wright book was on the table. And so I've been influenced a lot. He's not Jesus, but all that to be said, I knew that a chapel at this prominent university, seminary, there was just a chapel probably weeks before that where N.T. Wright is not preaching the gospel, and this was being said. And keep in mind that a year prior to, they're praising like N.T. Wright's book on resurrection. I'm not going to get super nerdy here, but it was over like justification, and John Piper had a response. Here's what I appreciated. I may not agree with everything Piper says, just like I don't agree with everything N.T. Wright says, but Piper had reached out to N.T. Wright before he published his response to the view on justification. N.T. Wright, within hours, responded. That was how quickly he read this, and said something along the lines of, man, I could see where you land there, but I humbly disagree. And N.T. Wright, keep in mind, has been saying the same thing for a long time. This isn't about N.T. Wright, but that was a model that no one knew about. And so when this guy came over to my table and sees the N.T. Wright book, I said to him, the book is probably the first thing you noticed, isn't it? And he's like, well, yeah, I did. And I said, yeah, see, that's the problem. Yeah. We don't even sit down and talk, and have a conversation. You're really responsible for leading students at a seminary without ever having a conversation to teach them even how to think for themselves and process some of this. And so I think the same thing here. I think sometimes I will say this. I don't know Stanley's response in that, so I wouldn't speak into that. I do think in the conversation we're talking about, sometimes I feel like whether you're conservative or progressive, I feel like a lot of the podcasts that are out there of, let's say, Christian origin or of religion, it's almost like we baptize progressivism, and so we're only going to react to some of the more conservatives that I would not align myself with and things they're doing or pointing out that we're not willing to say to the other side too, if I think you're wrong here. And I think the Stanley is one of those examples, is I don't agree with an article being written like the train has left the station. Like, I want to say that I don't agree with that if you haven't made the phone call to him first off. Yeah. And so, but I do think there's folks out there on the podcast thing, that it does feel like they have baptized progressivism in a way that we're only going to bring up topics like this, where some conservative, some right-wing conservative, has reacted to this, and whatever. And I may be, push back on that, but that is
I don't push back on it like that. I agree with you in some ways, but I think that's also depending. I think this is the bigger part of it, is it depends on what camps you fall into. Sure. I think sometimes, and I think what I mean by that is, I made a conscious decision a few years ago. I'm not going to let them decide for me what the battle lines are for my faith. And I did that during seminary, because I remember in college, and we went to very similar Christian colleges, I quoted someone that wasn't a restoration person in one of my papers, and I got a pretty bad grade because I referenced this person that, what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't in that camp, And I think that's where we have to be careful sometimes with some of these disagreements is, that I think sometimes what happens, and not the Stanley thing, I'm just talking about just in general.
Yeah.
Like, we're like the N.T. Wright thing. We're just easy to dismiss N.T. Wright, some people, because he's not Southern Baptist, or
I'm easy to dismiss John Piper because I'm not a Calvinist.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. I think that's the bigger issue sometimes is, regardless of this issue, it was, you got two guys that are on very different sides of an issue, but also I think probably a lot of issues. And it was like, you're either in this camp or you're in this camp. And I'm sitting there and going, no, I kind of understand both. And I'm not trying to get political, but it goes back to politics. Like, for me, I'm very much like, okay, I can see sometimes, does that make sense? And I think that's where we get in trouble too sometimes with this bigger debate, is you feel like you have to fit into one of those camps. And if you don't, the other person's just wrong. It doesn't matter even what they say; they're just wrong.
Or if you hold a single view, you're automatically put into one camp, as if you hold all of the.
Because that's what I was going to say. I mean, even me and you. I mean, we haven't. There's probably issues we could bring up right now, even though we kind of have similar backgrounds, that we would probably just disagree with on. But I don't sit there and go, "Oh, Chad's such an idiot," Like, I just say, "Okay, we just have different viewpoints on this." I think, but then I'm also not going to write a blog and be like chad'sanidiot.com, but like, I think that's one of those things that it seems like, and I think the bigger concern is from the outside world that just seems so confused, because Christianity is so broad.
Yeah.
I mean, you know this, you've traveled to the Middle East. I haven't. There's people in the Middle East, and especially in the Holy Land, that their Christianity looks very different than ours. But they're Christians.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I mean, in even N.T. Wright's context, where he comes from versus growing up in the Bible Belt, his version of Christianity is going to look different because of where he's grown up. But I think he still has the same respect for the scriptures that people that grow up here do. Does that make sense? I think that's where we have to be careful sometimes.
Yeah. There was an interesting article I was reminded of when I knew we were talking about this. James K. Smith wrote an article called Faithful Compromise. And you don't typically hear those two words together, because we talk about compromise in such a way that almost, in his article, this is kind of the point, is redeeming or reclaiming the word compromise. And so you take a character like Daniel, who is taken into a complete secular society. I mean, his name has changed everything that you could possibly imagine. And I think throughout that, we recognize Daniel's faithfulness. But there's points where he had to make compromise. And I think that's why I think there's something to be said there about what faithful compromise looks like.
Yeah.
Plenty of the people listening work a job, wherever that may be. They may not agree or align with some of the things the corporation holds in view, but it's like, there's a sense of compromising, because on one end, we could look at that person and saying, oh, because their corporation holds this view, then they must hold this view. And so yet there's space given to where, if they're a follower of Jesus, that there's a faithfulness to Jesus, even in that context. It's like, I was asked about something that was a difference of opinion last week, or I could hold a difference of opinion. And I said, now listen, if you had me teach that, I would be compromising what I believe to be true. Oh, we would never do that. And I'm like, okay, like you hold this view, I hold this view. Now, for us, I think it's what's considered orthodox and some of those, and those are bigger conversations. But I think in general, I think there's something to be said about, I think we have a lot of Daniels listening. And it's like there's something to be said and reclaimed with that faithful compromise of what that looks like. And, I don't want to belabor the point, but that's something I've come back to. And James K. Smith does a much better job with that article. But this article was written 10 years ago. So it's not like it's being written yesterday. But I think it's something to come back.
And I always reference when people talk about conflict within the church, I always go back to, Paul and Barnabas, about John Mark. Like different contexts. But these two guys very differently viewed what should happen there. It's in the Bible. This disagreeing. But even you get into like Peter and Paul and the way they view the Gentile. There's a lot of disagreements even amongst those guys. And so it's been a part of the story. To me, it's all about how you handle that disagreements.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's where with social media age and maybe even some of these emotional responses, because not just the Andy Stanley stuff, but a lot of the issues that I see are coming to the forefront are the hot button issues. And, and again, that's letting people decide the battle lines of whether you're for us or against us.
Yeah.
And, and I'm like, well, if we sat down and had coffee, we could talk about this, but I also think too, you got to be careful too with not just defending. I don't know. I feel like sometimes too, guys got to be careful. Like, and maybe, some of them already know this, like there's going to be a response. Like if you say something, like you're that prominent or have that platform and you say something, there's going to be a response by people and you just have to be okay with that. And I think that, you just have to know that sometimes.
Yeah. If you're putting something out on social, Andy, for this matter, they're, these churches of that size, you're going to hold conventions and things very dissimilar than the average church, right? 99% of the churches wouldn't be holding a convention. It's like, so you put yourself out there, setting yourself up by maybe not having a sermon on the front end that I'm not going to tell him what to do or what not to do, but there is a response. I do think some of the visceral reaction is, man, because you hold a view I don't, I'm coming after you. Or I feel like you're attacking my faith because you hold or you disagree with me. And I'm like, I don't know where you could possibly get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in the teachings of Jesus.
What do you think, Penny?
Oh, I think we've said enough. I do have some questions. I am one of those type of people that I'm like, well, how do we fix this? Because to me, we can agree to disagree. We can have Christians and we can compromise, but then everyone still has the internet. They still have social media. They still have the platform.
You have to get rid of the internet. That's how we fix it.
I know. That's the question. How do we fix this?
You get rid of the internet.
Because we have, for me, as someone with a teenager, it's like I'm trying to do my best to figure out when ideas for her, like being a teenager is just tough. It is a spectrum of different things that they have to deal with. And how do I teach her, wherever she falls on that spectrum, to respond with love as opposed to react with anger? Do we start with our teenagers? Are we even fixable? Is our generation, our older generations can we fix that?
I don't think so because, to be honest, because I think that the internet is to us a new tool. It's not to these generations that are growing up. That's just, but now, you all of a sudden have access to something where you can respond publicly. And I think that sometimes, and I don't know in the context of this, but I think a lot of times when I see stuff like this, the person that responded is trying to shame the other person. And people have been wanting to do that throughout human history. But it's just now we actually have the ability to do that, to attack them. And, and so part of that is, I don't know, because now all of a sudden, it used to be somebody might have a disagreement on a theological or political issue and they have to write a book, which nobody wants to read the book. So they write the book, they feel good. But now all of a sudden you put something out there and it can be retweeted, reposted, commented on. And I say this is the bigger thing. I always will say this. We're in the age of comment, not conversation. Everybody just wants to comment. Nobody actually wants to have a real conversation about not only the way people are responding, but sometimes even the main issue itself. Because here's the thing. the conversation is starting to shift again from what their conversation. Does that make sense? Like now it's just shifting to the comments, not the actual topic that started all this, And so I don't know. It just gets. I don't know how you fix it.
Your question, how can we gotta do better. It's like for me, it's married man, 3 kiddos. Like that's where it starts for me in my context. Is right. How am I intentional here? That's the biggest thing, even between siblings. Hey, don't come in accusing your brother of, eating the snack or whatever it may be. It's like, and that sounds so silly and petty, but this is what we're talking about. I mean, it's those types of like, did you ask your brother yet? Like, did you call this person yet? Like, are you assuming that because, people could listen to this podcast and say, Chad holds a progressive view of sexuality, or, Chad loved the Rob Bell book.
Yeah.
And it's like, Chad read the Rob Bell book, and I'm in agreement with you. I thought it was blown out of proportion, but that's another conversation for another day. Yeah. But it just, it's that type things. It's like we listen to a soundbite and we immediately go. And sadly, in the world we live in, and the fleshy world we live in, is I'm going to get some hits. I'm going to get some followers if I go and do this or attack this person. And, I know that this stream is going to follow me. And because we live in a polarizing world. And I just think there's models. And I think that world, digital world, can be redeemed, because I think there's models of what's it look like to have conversations.
I think you bring up a good point. I don't know if as a culture we can fix it, but as individuals we can. And I think what you said about your kids, like one of the things that, so like with my kids, I have a temper. I got it from my dad. Like I just have a temper. I talk about it from the stage, quick fuse, but it doesn't last long. But there have been times where my kids do something wrong and I get upset. And later I'll go to them and I'll say, hey, what happened was wrong. Like what you did was still wrong, but the way that I responded was also wrong. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so like, let them know like, hey, like what you did was not okay, but also the way that I responded was not okay. And I think that teaching kids, like, there's healthy and unhealthy ways to respond to things. So I don't know if you can treat a culture, but you can start in your house or church or wherever and see how that goes.
I feel good that I'm not the only one that has to have that talk with kids, because I've had that, like, you were out of line, but then it doesn't make what I did okay either. So we're both wrong and we're both going to get better. But what you said about with the kids, I never think about that, but what we kind of do online is when you've got your kids and you're teaching them when they get mad, you don't hit. Like that's the first reaction is, I'm going to hurt this other person. And I think we don't do it physically as much, but online people, they hear something and their first reaction is, what can I do against this person to show, like to attack them, instead of just saying, well, wait a minute. Why did this just happen? Maybe take a breath. And I think they just have this first, whatever my first thought is, I got to get it out there and let people know this is what I think, this is what I believe in the moment. And then later you might even look back and go, maybe I shouldn't have said that immediately, or maybe I should have looked into this more. But people they feel like everything they say has got to be heard by everybody all the time. So I don't know, Jeremy. You don't seem to have any answers for us, man.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it is an easy fix. I don't think there's. Other than really killing the internet, and I don't think none of us want that. We don't want to go back to.
I think it is a one person at a time, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Learn the art of apologizing well.
Yeah.
Well.
Yep.
I think that was a pretty good little discussion, everybody. And I disagree with Jeremy, but we're still friends. I think I would be very happy to get rid of the internet in a heartbeat.
No. Your whole business would fall apart.
Listen, I've often said,
I'm just saying,
if for some reason, I don't know. Watch this cord, please, Jeremy. It's making me so anxious. Okay. I know Chad's you've been here a lot. We had an episode of if we all got $1 billion, what we would do, and Jeremy would buy us a building and then he would leave. Is what he told us. So, which is good. I'd take it. The first thing I would do is phone and internet are just gone. There's just, if I didn't have to work, I have no need for social media. I have no need to get involved with any of that, because you can't see me. This is not a video podcast. I've had an old phone for a month now, and I can't get on half of the social media sites on there, and it is You'd be surprised of how little grief comes into my life on a day-to-day basis when you're not checking things all day long because your phone won't allow you to do such. So maybe if you're feeling anxious and grumpy about life, tuck that phone away and go back to the flip phone. I don't think it's that bad of an idea. So,
Yep.
Well, this has been another episode of the podcast. If you have anything that you'd like to hear us discuss within reason, you can always reach us at paul@journeysshepherdsville.com. And until then, we will see you all in 2 weeks.